Navigating the passive and the active voice is a finer point of writing that, if mastered, can really improve your writing style and give you more flexibility in how you communicate. Formal writing, especially in academia and in business settings, favors active voice for a few reasons. The first thing to know is that the active voice gives the subject agency. So the subject is the primary person, place, or thing taking the action in the sentence. In this case, we call the subject the doer. It's the person, place, or thing that is doing the action in that sentence. Here are two examples to consider. Melody asked her client for photo identification. Or, Melody directed her employees to the people who could help resolve the issue. In each case, the subject, Melody, is doing something concrete and is changing something in that sentence. In the active voice, these sentences end up being more concise because the subject is getting right into the action. In these two examples, the writer is discussing what Melody is doing. There's no wasted time introducing the subject or trying to figure out who the subject is. Professional settings often want precise, concise writing, and the active voice can accomplish this more ably than the passive voice. The opposite is often true of the passive voice. The passive voice is when the subject is being acted upon by an object. The subject is not doing the action directly, but instead it is being affected by another entity's actions. An object usually requires a prepositional phrase, which typically extends the sentence length. I cover prepositional phrases in another video, which is linked both on the screen and in the video description. Here are a couple of examples for you to consider. They're written in the passive voice, and later we will be switching them around so that they're in the active voice. So the first example is, the sailor was swept away by the sea before his shipmates could rescue him. In this case, we have the sailor being acted upon by the sea, but the sea is the active agent. So the sea is the subject and the sailor is the object being acted upon by the sea. We also have a large gap between the sailor and his shipmates, even though they are closely aligned in the sentence and syntactically. The sea is wedged between them and there's a huge divide in the sentence, and the way that we're portraying our meaning is actually being skewed by the way the sentence is constructed. This may work in a novel or in poetry where you're trying to create higher meaning, but it can be clunky in a formal setting. The second example is as follows. The driver was asked by Natalia which stop she could take to reach her destination. While there might not seem to be an issue with the sentence initially, the sentence is disordered. The message does get across. It's unclear, however, who the focal point is. We have a driver receiving a question, we have the asker, and then we have the question itself. Should not the information being received be more closely aligned with the receiver? This is what we're going to try and resolve going forward. There is nothing wrong with having the passive voice now and again, but writing becomes much wordier, and if you write using mostly the passive voice, then your subject will have little presence in your writing or in your speech. So rather than having strong subjects that are constantly in the reader's attention, you could end up losing the main points in the long, convoluted sentences that you're structuring. If you use the passive voice repeatedly, the reader may lose the subject completely and struggle to figure out what your message is. Remember, you want to guide your reader by the hand. The reader should not have to guess what point you are trying to make. Switching things from the passive voice to the active voice is actually pretty easy, and it's a quick switch as you revise your work. Let's take those passive sentences that we saw earlier and make them more active. In the sentence, the sailor was swept away by the sea before his shipmates could rescue him, we take the subject, the sea, and move it to the front of the sentence so that it is aligned with the verb and it is doing the action. This makes the subject the active agent in the sentence that is acting upon the other people that are involved. The finished product looks like this. The sea swept the sailor away before his shipmates could rescue him. Notice how tightly bound everything is now that we've changed the sentence. The sailor and the shipmates are closely aligned. The sailor is the one being rescued, not the sea. and the C is acting upon all the other agents in the sentence. It's a catastrophic sentence, so having the C, the cause of the catastrophe, coming first is actually a really good way of highlighting exactly what the problem is. The same thing goes for the next sentence. The driver was asked by Natalia which stop she should take to reach her destination. If we take the subject Natalia and bring it to the front of the sentence, here's what we get. Natalia was asked by the driver which stop she should take to reach her destination. Notice how Natalia is more active in the sentence, asking the driver directly the information that she needs to know. Natalia becomes the focus rather than the driver. The sentence also flows better since we have Natalia, what she is doing, then who is receiving the information, and then what information is being received. The passive and the active voice may seem like a minor application, but the more wired in you are to these functions, the more diverse you can make your message and the more strategies you will have at your disposal. So thanks for listening.